Hi, Mick. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. And yeah, social media management is the technical term. You got that right.
Is that right? Social media management?
Social media
And
management. Yeah.
and do you consider yourself a social media management platform?
Yep. Social media management software, platform, social media suite. Like there are many names, but it's basically the tool that, or the tools that help you manage your presence on social media and make it seamless and profitable.
Seamless and profitable.
Hmm.
Everybody likes those words. Um, Seamless, I think, is maybe one of the most overused words in marketing, but still a great word.
Like frictionless,
Frictionless,
if you
yeah.
prefer.
Um, Emmerich, this you've been on this show before. We've always had really interesting conversations. But for the people who don't know you, can you tell us about your role and what you do
Yeah.
at Agorapulse?
I'm the CEO and co-founder. We started Agorapulse 12 years ago. Well, it's 12 years ago.
12 years in.
Yeah. And we're a bootstrap company, i.e., we have never injected cash in the business to grow the business. We grow the business with our customers' credit cards, which is a good funding mean. And we are 170 people right now in 15 countries. 40% of our revenue comes from North America, 40% from Western Europe. We are at 20 million ARR, and we built that business inbound with an inbound motion and a product-led, product marketing-led motion. And and we have one thing that nobody else has because I filed a patent for it in the US, which is a way to track your ROI, return on investment, from your organic social media activities, whether they are responding to comments or private messages or posting on your various social profiles. Like, we're basically able to tell you the traffic that generated, the conversions that generated, and the revenue. If you have the right setup in your Google Analytics GA4, you can know all of that. And it's quite an exciting differentiator.
How long ago did you file for that patent?
It's a long process. I didn't expect that to be that complicated and long, but
and expensive.
Yeah, well, it's actually more expensive in the amount of time you have to spend on it than the actual money. The actual money, if you ask me, is probably around $20,000 to $30,000. So it's, I'd say at our size, it's reasonable. But the time it took was through the roof.
Yeah.
Very
I'm sorry. I just want a precision. You said 170 employees?
Yep.
Okay. And are they mostly remote, or how do you organize that?
Yeah. So we've always had a base in Paris, and that base in Paris has always been about the product team. So engineers and product managers and UI UX designers. Those teams, they are mostly based in Paris, and they come to the office 2 days a week, at least. Some come more often, but 2 days a week is the minimum. And everybody else never come to the office because they have no office. They work from home. Yeah.
You guys try and find a couple times a year where you get everybody together, or you do extra things activities together?
Yeah, we did that before COVID, and then we had to cancel our latest company retreat when COVID hit in 2020, and we have not done one since then because 2021 there was still COVID stuff, and this is the kind of event you have to organize like 8 months in advance. You can't gather more than 100 people with a 2 weeks notice. That doesn't work. So you got to find a place and wait for everybody to eat and organize and have an amazing agenda and everything and all the flights. So you need time. So we couldn't do one in 2020, couldn't do one in 2021. And then in 2022, I think some kind of a recession hit the world. I think you're aware. And, business is more difficult. And we are very much more looking at how we spend our money and how we save our money. We have not been able to find the budget. And now when you're 170 people, the budget for that it's crazy. It's a lot of money. It's very, very expensive. So we have not found a way to do it again, but I'd love to be able to do it again in the future. I don't exactly know when, but 2023 doesn't seem like a year we're going to be able to do it again. What we've done instead was team retreats, teams of sites. So we've done offsites for for the marketing team and the sales team and the customer success team and customer support team. So those we're going to try to do more of. But I'm not going to lie, we are pressing hard on budgets, and those offsites are sometimes cut because we don't want to spend the money there.
Understood. How has the recession impacted your business? I'm sure it's put more of a focus on ROI for social media. So you guys have probably built a lot of maybe more your value proposition around that recently with the recession.
Yeah, we're definitely insisting more on this. What we're telling to the market is that if you're doing social media the old way without measuring anything, you're probably going to be out of a job in 6 months, but you don't know it yet. And but that's very true. I mean, I basically talk to social media professionals and I tell them I'm a CEO. I'm going to tell you how a CEO think.
Yeah.
And the way we think, or any type of executive, the way we think is we look at the activities and say which one are we 100% sure are contributing to the bottom line, and those we keep, sure, we're not cutting those. But those who are not sure and are done by people who are expensive are the first to be cut. And you've probably seen in our industry a lot of layoffs, like a lot with capital L in the past 12 months. And hear me, this is not finished. If you don't want to be part of those, then you have to look at your job in a way that's more bottom line driven, and that's why we've been focusing on that when we communicate to the market. Absolutely.
You piqued my interest by saying that this isn't finished, but I don't think we should divert. Otherwise, we could spend an hour probably talking about that.
Could be.
Well, this goes back to some related things. So you were talking about a patent. But let's talk about some best practices. So one of the things is ROI. So you guys help measure ROI with your approach.
Yep.
I think this is really important because I think a lot of organizations, unfortunately, especially if they're not mature, confuse activity with progress.
Yep.
So what ROI? So what companies should be looking for?
They confuse output with outcome.
Yeah.
That's a confusion I see across most of the marketing teams I came across. They think output is outcome, and it's not the case, and that's a problem.
Okay, so when people are doing social media, especially a SaaS B2B market, which we're talking about, what should they be really looking at as far as ROI?
So they should. First and foremost, as of today, 99% of the market on social media is focusing on engagement and visibility. That's the focus. That's the unique focus. What we're not saying is this is not an important focus. It is an important focus for sure. You want what you do on social to generate brand awareness and visibility and make your brand shine and make your product shine. Definitely you want that. There's no question. You should not do that. But if our message is if that's the only thing you're doing and you're doing nothing to impact the bottom line, you will be much more at risk than if you do impact the bottom line. That's our message. And impacting the bottom line means that you are thoughtful of what social media can do to drive bottom line improvement. And unfortunately, most social media professionals are not thoughtful enough of that. And that's what we're trying to teach them and help them with. Like, what can you do so when you produce content and engagement on social media, it eventually leads to bottom line impact? And that's been my passion for the past 12 months. So just to give you a couple of examples, we have customers who changed their strategy on social. They used to post content that was trying to drive, clicks to the website and product purchase and that kind of stuff. And they changed that by creating content that was amazingly helpful. And that customer I'm thinking about is in the health sector. So they were, instead of creating content selling the medication, they were plant-based medication, so they were allowed to do that. Instead of selling content that were selling the stuff, they were creating content about the affection and the disease and the pains that the medication was supposed to address. And they were creating content about dealing with it, identifying it, diagnosing it, that kind of stuff. And that was very interesting for those who were affected by those actions and diseases and pains. And they were engaging in the comments with those people, those readers or viewers, by sending them to the product page. Hey, by the way, thank you for your interest. If you want to learn more about the product, here you can find. And instead of trying to sell in the first intention, they were basically helping and providing valuable content as the first intention, and then using the engagement on the content as the place where they were selling, the place where they were sending traffic to the website. So that's one example of strategically thinking about how can we get more people engaging with us and use that engagement to drive sales.
That seems like such an obvious thing, but I see organizations repeatedly do this, and people repeatedly do this all the time.
Yep.
It's almost kind of like you meet somebody and to impress them, you talk about yourself.
Yep.
No, you meet somebody and you ask them questions about them, get them talking about them.
Yep.
And that's when you get to the heart of things. So it's like one of the first things is really know your audience, know what the subject is, and what they want to what they want to know about that, or how you can be of help.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very, very learning from any business person. You absolutely don't want to talk about you. You want to talk about them. And trying to sell them a medication is talking about you, trying to explain to them how they can diagnose and how they can identify and how they can de-identify, like this is not what you have. If these are the symptoms, this is something else. And then helping them learn more about their health and how they can deal with that. That's talking about them. And then when they're interested by that and they want to engage with you, then they gave you the right to now talk about you because you can do something about that. Something else I saw that was very interesting as well from same companies that they were using. But Instagram it's very hard to track business impact from Instagram because there's no traffic. You cannot measure traffic coming from Instagram because there's no traffic coming from Instagram because there are no links in Instagram. As simple as that, except for the links in the bio. But in the posts themselves, you cannot, where you can easily do that in Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. And what they were doing is they were using stories, and in the stories you can put links. And but the stories were not, again, they were not about the product. The stories was about the content and how helpful it could be for people who were affected by X, Y, and Z. And within the story, you had a chance to, hey, you want to learn more, you want to find out, you want to get advice, message us. And then the story was generating private message on Instagram, and through the private message, then the sales discussion was happening. So it was basically, they were given permission by the person to say, yes, I want to know more, tell me. And that's what social media has been about since day one. The conversation, please engage in conversation. I remember in the early days in 2010, 2011, it was all about conversations. But people have forgotten that you still need to create a conversation. You still need to trigger the conversation to be allowed to sell something that's of value to them. If there's no conversation, then it's an ad. It's not social media.
Yeah, I guess if you're just using it to talk about what your company does without really exploring everything that's going on around there, that's problematic. And I think it's also, no one's really going to pay attention. And also the other thing on social media is, great content is so important. You got to stand out. And I think if you're just talking about yourself, you're not going to stand out much. What about, I'd like to hear your thoughts on voice. Because a lot of organizations, I'm not sure, do you have a thought, Agora Pulse? I'm sure you guys use social media quite a bit. Do you have a voice? Do you have a kind of a contract with yourself on what your voice is and who you are as an organization? Is that aligned with your brand, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I think we have a voice of the company document. And I remember reading it in this document that, you would like to have a beer with them. So that's telling you that's not a strict voice or a corporate voice or a serious voice. It's a buddy voice. So I think that has been defined. I'm not the one writing on social media or engaging on social media. Unfortunately, I have a company to run, so I have very little time to do that. But I know it's been thought through and defined, and we define who we want to be when we present ourselves to the world on social or anywhere else for that matter. Like, basically, we shouldn't present ourselves differently on social or in a conference or in a sales demo or in a customer support call. That's the same thing. And I like this to be a consistent experience, basically. So, which goes back to our values and our culture as a company, and it's probably what it should be, to not make things complicated. Like, look at who you are, how you talk to each other internally, and how you talk to each other, how you talk to your customer, or when you do customer support and prospect community sales, and be that. Like, define what that means and how it's called, and be that when you're on social as well.
Yeah, when we identified, or when we reworked the B2B Rocks brand, we wanted to be youthful and energetic and fun.
Yeah.
And I think our social media posts on LinkedIn, I've gotten contacted by a lot of people, and they're like, it's fun. You can't deny that. So yeah. I think that's good. But again, I don't write that content, so not my thing. What's some other aspects you think that are really important to ROI and return?
It's to be, you have to be a little bit creative, because if you're not creative and you're going straight in, hey, let's post on Facebook and add links to the post and track what we get, it's not going to work really well. And the tactics I've seen that were working the best were creative ones, like these Instagram story to private message to, hey, if you want to learn more, message us, engage the conversation, and then use that as the sales conversation starter. That worked really well, but it took them a while and a lot of iteration to figure out, oh, on Instagram we can't do that, and it works fine. It works well. So trying things and iterating is necessary, because the natural incline will be to do the bad stuff or the wrong stuff, which is, put a post on our latest product release and put a link to it. And that usually doesn't work really well. It only works well when the audience is already a community and they're very, very engaged and they're very, very excited. So we have one customer who sells T-shirts and caps and sweatshirts that have the logo of their American university sports team. And I'm not American, but what I learned from Americans is that their university sports team are really, really important to them. And this company is very, very successful with the communities of, sports fan within universities and universities alumni. And they sell a sweatshirt or T-shirt with your university sports team logo on it, and people go crazy. They want to buy them, and they have special deals with university sports team to do that. And they are running those campaigns on Twitter where they promote new collections and the new logo and new university sport team and so on and so forth. And they don't have to be very creative, because the community is so freaking engaged with anything, and they're so ready to buy anything that comes out. It works for them. But let's face it, for most companies, ours included, this is not the case. You have to be creative. You have to do something that's out of the box. And well, as you would for any kind of marketing activity. If your company is not selling to an amazingly engaged community, then you probably have to think out of the box for everything marketing that you're doing, right? It's not only on social media. If you do really stupid, basic marketing stuff that's not resonating, that's not triggering people, making them feel, oh, that's amazing, I love that, and your community is not highly engaged with you, or probably not going to make a great result,
great impactful
yeah, great
content.
Impact for sure. So it's not that different. I mean, let's face it. I have a B2B software. It's not sexy. People are not crying and yelling to buy my product when I release a new feature. So we have to be creative. You have to constantly ask ourselves, okay, what can we do? So we are exciting. So they are triggered. They are thinking, oh my God, that's interesting. And that's one of the reasons why we built this ROI feature, because we heard social media professionals and CMOs and VP marketing saying, "Yeah, social media, it's necessary evil. We have to do it, but is it really worth it?" Like we heard that over and over and over again for years and years and years, and we thought, okay, we have to solve for that. And we looked at the market and nobody else was doing it, so we said, okay, let's solve for that and let's tell stories of how people are solving for it, so we can inspire those who are not yet and have a different stance on the market. So we did it because we wanted to think out of the box and be different. And I think you have to do that when you do social as anything else. Like when you Google ads, if you do Google ads like everybody else, you're going to pay $15 a click, and your Google ads are not going to be worth it. They're not going to make money. They're going to suck money out of you, but not make money for you. And I think it applies to social media as well.
I guess, there's increasingly, you were bootstrapped back when it wasn't sexy, wasn't even really, I'm not sure if it had been coined yet. I guess it had been coined as a term, but also, product-led growth as well. But, with the downturn, as you mentioned, there's been this increased focus on customer acquisition, and and at the same time, customer acquisition costs because of Google and things like that keep going up. So if you have this thing like social media, where you have an unexploited place where you can potentially drive business or drive upsells or drive cross sales or drive some additional leads. But it looks like instead of saying, hey, this is our new feature, more things like it should be more, hey, DM us if you'd like to know more about what this new feature does. Or DM us if you have this problem and we'll tell you about our new feature. And more, focus more on that. And I just think it's so easy as a marketer and as someone who communicates, just to talk about yourself. It reminds me of a joke of the guy who I won't tell the joke online. That's a bad joke. All right, never mind. We'll skip the joke. Well, good. These were all things that I had on here. Use generate curiosity about your SaaS product. I think a lot of times people do social media almost as an afterthought. It's almost like, okay, we've written this white paper. Okay, we have this new feature. Now we'll do something on social media. And it's almost something that they pull together really quickly on Canva, and then they'll publish that. And they'll think like,
done.
I'm done. Got that done. And that's kind of the last thing. And they're not really thinking about how to work that. So I think it's a really important exercise to turn things around and make sure that you're speaking and using the right voice. How do you guys, what are the best practices you see for drive engagement? Do you see some other things people are doing?
Well, the people I see who drive engagement, and so I'm going to be a little biased because I'm a LinkedIn. I'm more a LinkedIn user than anything else, and everything I'm witnessing and I'm hearing is more coming from LinkedIn. But I suppose it can apply to the other social networks. They're very, very consistent, which I'm not, by the way. I'd love to, but I don't have time. Yeah. They're very, very consistent. It's like,
so you mean regular?
Yeah,
they post
very regular, and I can tell you, it's like sales or SDR. It's the consistency of the activity that eventually pays out. If you are doing amazing stuff, but it's very inconsistent and very rare, like it's never going to lead anywhere. So there's a high level of consistency, and there's a high level of quality in what they share. It's really interesting. It's really good. So usually you can't succeed at that if you're a rookie and you just started your career, because you have nothing to say, nothing to share, nothing to give. So the people who do that, they usually have a career. They have done stuff. They have learned a lot of stuff, and they're basically sharing their learnings. And they're doing that in a consistent manner. So those are the first two things. And the third, which is quite counterintuitive, is that they repeat themselves a lot. And this is the skill that I still have to improve myself on, which is repeating myself. Because we feel sometimes that when we've said something once, everybody have heard about it. Everybody knows about it. But this is not the case. So those guys are usually really, really clever and good at repeating themselves without sounding like they repeat themselves. I don't know if that's clear, but they're delivering the same message or messages in many different ways with one-time using video, one time using a graphic, one time using a photo, one time using a long piece of text. And they're delivering those messages over and over again through different mediums or different channels. And they establish credibility around those things because now they're known for them. They're known for the sales guy who talks about work-life balance. I don't know, whatever it is.
Sure.
And eventually you become they are really good at that. And that's because you heard them again and again and again say the same thing in different ways, in different shapes and forms. And I think we all could get better at repeating ourselves without repeating ourselves. That makes sense.
Well, I get you. And I mean, the obvious thing that comes to mind for me is like when an organization, for example, takes the time to produce a white paper and then maybe an infographic derived from that white paper. Once you publish that, once you do a social media post on that, it may get traction. It may not get traction. But there's nothing wrong with going back to that in 6 to 8 weeks and trying a different approach and remarket and launch those on social media if it didn't get a lot of traction the first time, and try a different approach. So I think like once you create a white paper or once you create some sort of marketing asset, I think you should be, list that asset and say, hey, have we gone back to this right now? Has something changed in the market where this is something or some news come out? There an opportunity here for us to go back to the well and reuse this asset.
Yeah.
That's one thing that's obviously comes to mind.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's funny. I've been responsible for doing social media posts. And the other thing too is that internally, I'm not sure, the tools for measuring ROI. It's hard because there's not always a lot of people that understand the importance of this, of the visibility you're creating for the organization, and not even sure they recognize this as a channel. These are all things that were on my things. Foster ongoing engagement. You already addressed this.
Yeah.
Identify, address pain points. You addressed this. Promote exclusive discounts and offers. Think that's useful?
No, I don't.
No? That's good. That's good.
I don't. Again, I'm in a B2B space, mid-market.
Yeah.
I don't think discounts or promotions are meaningful, and I don't think we should do them. I think we should focus on the pains we're solving and, get to an agreement that there is a pain, there's a problem, we can solve it. We can solve it in a meaningful way, and it can make a meaningful difference in their lives. And then we can talk about price and see, where it could fit. But starting the conversation with discount makes me sick.
Don't hold back, Emmerich. Thank you. I like it. Honesty. I had a friend who had a restaurant and he never had loyalty cards. He's like, no, not going to do it. You come to my restaurant because we have good food, please.
Yeah.
I don't want to.
That's a good one. I like that.
10% discount.
Yeah. I go to my hairdresser because they cut my hair really well. I don't go to them because they have a loyalty card.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. What about ads? So social media platform ads. I guess the fact that you can measure ROI on those platforms, you could probably do a better job of tracking the social media ad benefits as well. You see a lot of SaaS B2Bs using ads?
Yeah, I do see a lot of SaaS B2B using ads. I see a lot of SaaS B2Bs wasting a ton of money on ads as well. I don't think they are really good at it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think they are not creative with it. I think most of them target competitors' keyword and try to steal their traffic, which I think is a very dull thing to do. We tried it earlier on in our life, and what we got
didn't work well, I'm guessing.
No, it didn't work well at all. It was a big waste of money. Maybe it created some awareness, but I'm not even sure, honestly. I think when someone is searching for brand X, they're just going to go to brand. 98% is going to go to brand X directly. They're going to ignore the ads.
They're already educated. They're far down the funnel, I think.
Now, maybe 2% will click on your ad. So it's not zero, but it's so expensive and it's so not I'm not saying we never got customer from that strategy, but I don't think it's a strategy that really nails it. Like, I am not interested by 2% improvement. I'm interested by 20% improvement, 50% improvement. So if you have a team of 160 people who focus on improving everything they do by 2%, you're dead. If they try to improve what they do by 20 or 50%, they will fail most of the time. But once they find the thing that improves 20 to 50%, you win. So that's my way of looking at it. And I think most B2B SaaS I've seen are not looking at ads in a way that it's going to be, wow, 20% more, really, really good. It's like small incremental improvements. And I don't think it's worth it, in my opinion. So yeah, out of the box again, like we talked earlier.
Yeah, I think social media is the place if you're going to kind of unbutton your shirt and be a little bit more relaxed. Social media is really the place. And I think, frankly, if you're not creative and if you don't have a fresh approach, there's so much noise out there and there's so much content and there's so much great content compared to a few years ago that it's really difficult.
Your boring corporate ad is not going to do well on social media. That's for sure.
Yeah. Everybody, what's the thing? No one got fired for buying IBM, but they didn't choose to buy it because they had a social media ad. What's that company? Do you know, for our English-speaking audience or non-French European people that might watch this show at a later date or today, they might not know this, but I think their content is incredibly good and they do a great job on social media. Le Slip Français, do you know them?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're not B2B.
They're not B2B. They're B2C, that's correct. Yep. But I just think they have such a fresh approach to content because what they do is they don't talk about... Le Slip Français means French underwear company, basically.
French men's underwear.
French men's underwear. But they don't hardly talk about underwear. They talk about how to build a company, how to build a social media presence, how to build marketing channels. So their content is completely focused on another interest point than what you might think. And I think if you go look and you do an SEO search on keywords related to underwear, you're going to see there's not a lot of traffic around underwear. But if you look about marketing and different things like that, there's a ton of people that are interested in marketing. So they're able to tap a much bigger audience by doing that.
Yeah, and they have to be creative because if you pay $10 a click for a men underwear, it's already it's the price of the thing, so it doesn't work. In B2B SaaS, if we pay $10 a click, it's okay because our lifetime value is 10,000 or 20,000 or 25,000, so we can pay $10 a click. So that's why B2C marketers are usually much better at being creative because they don't have a choice. They can't pay $10 a click. It doesn't work for them. So that's why usually when you see creative stuff, that's exciting, like what Le Slip Français is doing. It's usually a B2C marketer. So I'd love to see more B2C marketing tactics using B2B marketing.
That's really interesting. I think you really need to have a vision, a marketing vision, and I think someone at a senior level who has that marketing vision and then understands how social media ties into that. What are some things I missed here today? What are some other things you think I should have been talking about or we should have been talking about?
We should have been talking about how difficult it is to measure return on investment on social networks that have no links on them. And there are two of them I can think of, which are TikTok and Instagram. And the reason is because in TikTok and Instagram, it's barely, if you don't have specific, hacks, there's no way to figure out if this is sending traffic to your site, if this is sending value to your bottom line. And there are a lot of people who are using Instagram and TikTok to, for example, most of the influencer stuff is TikTok and Instagram, most of it. Okay. There's almost zero influencer marketing done on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, almost zero. So that's quite interesting because you're getting those influencers, you're paying them to do an Instagram or a TikTok for you, for your brand, for your product. And there's no way you can track, native way you can track traffic generated. So the hack that has been working for those are the link in bio stuff. So you have basically you're basically directing the traffic to your link in the link in your bio, and that link in your bio is something you can set up on your end. So like the hack to solve for that is the link in bio. And by the way, we're releasing an ROI link in bio feature this week. Basically, I think it's today.
You heard it here first, everybody. ROI, LinkedIn.
So we basically took what everybody else was doing with their link in bio, and that's why it took us some time to release it, and we built it around the ROI measurement need that is our core vision and value proposition. So that's the one thing, and I know it's a challenge. And the second thing, and it's a passion of mine, so you're going to recognize that. The second thing is a lot of brands have a hard time delivering ROI and bottom line impact on their social networks on their own. And this is a struggle that we're having. I'm not going to lie to you. It's difficult.
This is interesting. Okay.
And what I have noticed is that if you're trying to do everything on your own as a B2B brand, you are usually very alone, very lonely, and it's really hard because you're probably not as exciting as you'd wish, and you don't have an engaged audience as you'd wish. And the best way out, or the best way forward, is to work with other people. Like to not do it alone, is to do it with others. And the two communities that we have identified for ourselves are our employees. It's 160 people, and they can help, and they're usually eager to help and happy to help. So how can we leverage that and leverage that energy and that power? And the other type of community is we call them our ambassadors. We can call them influencers, whatever. So we've had an ambassador program for I think 5 or 6 years. I'm not sure, but like a long time. And those are people that I knew personally. They were personal friends I met in social media conferences in the US and in the UK. And there were like a dozen of them. And they're all, bloggers, agency owners, but they have an audience. They have built their own audience, and they have their own content and their own presence. And we had, a relationship with them, and we said, okay, we'd like to help each other, and we're going to help you with this, or we're going to pay you something. And you're going to help us spread the word about new features and new value and your case study, or how you're using the tool, how it's bringing value to you. And so whether it's ambassadors, external ambassadors, i.e. influencers, bloggers, whatever, or internal influencers, i.e. employees, having a way to connect what you do on social media and how you can include these people in that, and how you can have them share your stuff and measure it, is, I think, the next big thing. And I don't want
to. I think that the term that came to mind while you're talking about that is kind of a network of micro influencers.
Yeah, but micro influencers that you already have and you already know.
Yeah.
And how
unexploited assets.
Yeah. How do you leverage that? How do you make that work for you? And as a consequence, not being alone trying to push your stuff on social, but have an army helping you push your stuff on social. And for me, that's the next big thing. And not to spoil any secret, we're working on something that's going to be released in November in order to address that, because I feel it's a problem we have very deeply, and it's hard. It's a hard problem to solve. And I feel that if we're trying to solve it alone, creating bottom line and impact on social without the help of others who can fight with us, then the fight's going to be too hard.
This whole SaaS space, technology, whatever, B2C even, but to develop, when I look at your organization and compare it to other organizations, it comes down to one really simple equation, which is who uses their assets the best. whether it's capital or people, it's like who exploits their assets the best. And so everyone's looking for a hack, the next best way to do things, and make sure that they're doing better than the others. So it seems right in line with that. And I agree. You should never say anything that someone else could say about you. So, if someone says to me, "Oh, I work for a great company,"
Yeah.
or "My company is great," that's one thing. If I hear from a third party person that's just a great company, then you're like, okay, that's really something.
Yeah. Great.
So that absolutely makes sense.
Mm-mm.
So you guys are working on something. What is the cut? Well, maybe you don't want to talk about what you're going to do around microinfra. So I'm kind of curious about it.
No, I'm happy to talk about it.
I'll be keeping an eye out for it in any case.
First of all, we want to build something that's easy to use, and we've seen a lot of technology around that are very, very convoluted and complicated. So that's not what we want. We want to use something that you can try, that you can play with, you can try, because this is our DNA. You can play and try Agora Plus today if you want. There's no cost, there's no credit card. You can go ahead and see if it's a fit for you or not. So we want something that fits that model. So it be easy to use and easy to understand and easy to learn. And we want something that can apply the same way to in-house or like. What we're building is something that you could deploy for 100 employees, 1,000 employees, 10 influencers, ambassadors, bloggers, 100, 500 of them. Like, make something that with ease and simplicity can scale to very small to test the water and see if it's something that works for you, to very large audiences. And obviously, we want to measure everything that's happening through those channels, like who is doing what value does that bring, what traffic did that bring, how many did they bring conversions, who brought the most revenue for that, this and that. And for me, that's the key, because I'm gonna admit a dirty secret, but we've had this ambassador program for 5 years. We've spent a ton of money on it. I have no clue if it's worth doing. No idea. The only reason we're doing it is because I, as the CEO, is convinced it's the right thing to do. But when you don't have a founder or a C-level executive, and ideally a CEO who thinks that doing something you cannot measure is a good idea, that thing never survives.
Yeah, you're going to need a high-level sponsor.
Yep, absolutely. And if you don't have a high-level sponsor, you need to show the ROI. There's no escape.
Okay, so you have your pool of 170 employees. And these people are creative. They're all across, different roles across the organization. Some of them customer facing, some of them, who knows?
Yeah.
But how do you get their good ideas out of them? Did you create like a chat for like, hey, or like a working group where it's open to anybody, where they can post? They're like, hey, I have a great social media. I think I have a social media idea. I think we should consider doing. They can put something up there, the genesis of an idea up there. Or how do you cultivate? How do you get those and harvest those ideas?
Ideation and idea generation in growing companies is always a very difficult topic, because, when you're 10 in the same room, there are ideas all the time. And actually the hard thing is to filter through ideas and just focus on the right ones. But because you're small and you have very limited resources, you also have the constraint of resources. So you can't do anything and everything because you just don't have time or money. When you get bigger, then you have more time and resources and people. So now the risk becomes, if you follow too many ideas at the same time, then you're going to spread yourself too thin. So the number one thing you need to do is to create very clear focus on what it is that the company is trying to achieve. And that needs to be very limited. Like the least amount of things you have in the goals that you have for the company, and you communicate to the whole team, the better. Like, people should be able to remember, this year we're focusing on 1, 2, and 3, maybe 4, but that's it. Those are the goals. Those are the key. So once you've done that, then they can have ideas that align with this. But if you don't have that, then they're going to have ideas that align with nothing. And even when you have set the goals and you have set the big priorities for the whole company that they can align with, you will have people who will come up with ideas that are absolutely not aligned with any of these. So being very strict on alignment with priorities and goals is the number one thing you have to do before you invest in ideation or generating ideas. The second thing you have to do is well, first listen to whatever suggestions, propositions, and ideas, not shut them down. Even if after the first 10 seconds, you already know you want to shut them down, don't do it after the first 10 seconds. Give it some space and show them that you're listening to them. So they feel that if this one's not the good one and it's not something you want to implement, they felt heard and they got a positive response. So the next time they have an idea, they'll come to you. Because if they don't feel heard and don't feel like there's a chance for them to have a positive response, they're just not going to come to you anymore. So be open, listen, and when you dismiss the idea, because you're going to dismiss 80% of ideas, if not more. I dismiss my own ideas 80% of the time. Be very clear as to why they're being dismissed. Explain the process that you use, the framework that you use, and the process that you use to dismiss the ideas. Because that way, again, they're not going to be afraid to share their next ideas because they understand you didn't dismiss them because they're inferior people or inferior ideas. You dismiss them because they didn't fit within a framework that's a clear framework that they can understand. Yeah. And the final thought on idea generation is, create the space for those ideas to be shared and those propositions to be made, and include that in the culture. Because if the culture is whatever I say, I get a no, then nobody's going to share ideas.
What's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point? I had a manager once who, whenever he had an idea that he thought our team should follow, instead of telling the group the idea outright, he would hold a meeting and he would ask a series of questions leading the team to that conclusion. Mm-hmm. And so then it became the team's idea.
Yeah, that's smart.
And so then the team was really enthusiastic, and he would be like, "Oh, you guys had a great idea today."
Yeah. That's a smart person.
Yeah, you got to have the that's why I think social intelligence is such a big part of our industry, and why I'm excited whenever I see a company hit, because I know people will go on from that company and start other companies, and each generation the ideas get better and better. Mm-hmm. What you've done to be financially independent and be bootstrap is now increasingly kind of not default, but more and more companies are looking at this, and I think this is making for leaner, meaner products.
Yeah,
I think it's a good thing in the end.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong way to grow a company. First of all, never forget that 99.99% of businesses are bootstrapped because they don't have access to capital. That's just a fact. That's 0.1 of businesses raise money. You should never forget that. One should never forget that. So the normal way to grow a business is not to get funded. The normal way to grow a business is just do what you can with what you have and build a business. And some businesses can't be grown because the co-founders have the skills and the ability to build a business themselves. So it can be grown without external funding. And they're not capital intensive businesses, which is SaaS is not capital intensive. If one of your co-founders is a developer and another of your co-founders is a sales guy or whatever, and you're a marketing guy, then here you go. You can create a SaaS company. You don't need any external funding. You just need to get unemployment payment for a year or two and live in France. But if you are building an AI framework or AI infrastructure, you will need funding because this costs an arm and a leg and an eye. So you will not be able to create an AI company without funding, because the amount of hardware and computing power that you need to create AI products is so tremendous that without external funding, you're never going to be able to do anything.
I guess a good point.
Okay, or a new car company, electric car company. Musk would have never created Tesla without external funding. It's impossible. It is so capital intensive that you cannot do that.
That's true. Good point. And I'm glad you brought up Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. Because when he's not measuring body parts or angling to measure body parts with Mark Zuckerberg, mm-hmm. he's running Tesla and that other little company, that's other little social media. Her name?
No, X.
That's right. They just changed their name. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about that?
No, go ahead.
What do you think about the name change?
Well,
What is your initial gut reaction to that?
I hope people are not going to think it's porn.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Is that a capitulation in the sense that he destroyed the Twitter brand? That there's no value left in the Twitter brand?
I don't know. That's a good question.
That's how I perceive it.
Yeah.
It's capitulation. That the brand has been ravaged. Auto-ravaged.
Yeah. So from my perspective, and it's only my perspective, and I don't know how the brand is perceived by others. I only know how I don't know how the brand is perceived overall. I don't have stats, or I don't have a survey, or I'm pretty sure there are people who are raving about Twitter and love Twitter and are Twitter fans. I'm not one of them as a user. What I see is the businesses that we work with, they have less and less interest in being active on Twitter, let alone advertising on Twitter. So what I see is that Twitter as a social network is not growing in usage among businesses that are using social network and social media to be present on social. It is the social network that has not grown with us in the past 2 years. Every other social networks have grown in number. Like we have more Facebook pages, we have more Instagram accounts, we have way more TikTok accounts. We have more LinkedIn. We have more of everything as we grow. Twitter remained flat, the number of accounts that we manage.
So marketers are engaging more with alternative social medias and not so much Twitter.
Yeah, that's what we see. And again, it's a data point of one company, and
Right.
I don't know what other companies are seeing, but for our company and our metrics and our numbers, and Twitter is not growing. It's stagnating. And because our company is growing, that means Twitter is declining in usage among the base of businesses that we're working with. It may not mean that Twitter is dead or anything, because you could have, journalists or individual contributors or influencers or whatever who are loving Twitter and getting a ton of value from Twitter. But it seems that businesses are not getting a ton of value from Twitter. That's what I see from where I am. Less than the other networks, which are still growing. So that's the first observation that I can make. The second observation that I can make is that the way Twitter was managed is definitely very different from the way Twitter is managed today. And I'm not saying it was amazingly managed before. It was not. But it certainly is not managed well now either. The way Twitter communicates with its partner is non-existent, and they're a very hard partner to work with. And it's probably because most people in the departments that you used to deal with have been let go or have quit. And I think,
or they made a lot of money and they just decided to move on.
Yeah, I don't know, but what I know is that the company was like 8,000 employees and is now less than 1,000. So when a company divides its headcount by 8, obviously there will be some road bumps. There would be some issues, and communication is an issue that it has created. It's difficult to get the right level of communication and understand what's going on, and so the whole API pricing thing was a nightmare for us. We never knew. It changed every week for 3 months. We hardly knew what we had to do. It was very, very complicated, very, very difficult. It basically ruined our Q2 entirely. My product guy almost burned out because of that. So it's a hard company to work with. It's always been a hard company to work with. So it's not an Elon Musk thing. It was hard before as well. It was not easy. Facebook Meta is a much easier partner for us. Like we have someone we can talk to. We have clear guidelines. We have clear communication. When things are going to change, we know in advance. Same with LinkedIn, by the way. Twitter has always been a bit harsh for that. So that's the second thing I can share. And again, it's not an Elon Musk thing, but he made it worse by reducing the headcount from 8,000 to 1,000. So and I understand it was necessary because the company was at the verge of bankruptcy. I'm always wondering why he bought a company at the verge of bankruptcy, to be honest with you. I wouldn't have done that, but it's his call, and he probably has a big master plan for that I don't understand.
What's interesting is also the investors behind it. I mean, it's like a who's who of like Mark Andreessen.
Yeah.
You know, these are some really sophisticated guys.
It's Elon Musk. I mean, it's the guy who sent people to space and is going to send people to Mars. He's the guy who revolutionized the car industry and disrupted the car industry. So, yeah, of course.
He completely disrupted. But here's the thing I don't get, which is, and I think you touched on this, which is they've mishit on some of the things they announced, like, okay, we'll do this like, oh, you're a real person. So I forgot what their term is, the blue mark.
Yeah, the blue check. Yeah.
The blue check, you're a real deal. And then they kind of change that. Yeah. And then it sounds like they announced the API pricing and then they kind of changed that. Yeah. So it sounds like they're not real clear on where they're going. And I think part of that between the job cuts is you also see is that they haven't communicated a clear vision to anybody. Like I have no idea where that company's going as a company. And that would concern me as an investor if I were an investor.
What the communication has been is this Elon Musk one this to be the everything app. Yeah. What I'm not sure, and I think you're not sure, and I think very few people are sure, is what is the everything app? What problem does it solve?
And why did they need Twitter to build the everything app when shouldn't they have started a new company to do that?
I mean, I think Elon Musk always had this everything app dream in the back of his mind. I think that's what happens here. And I think when he started X.com, that's what Twitter is going to be called, the payment company that then became PayPal. I think that's the idea he had at the back of his mind, like an app where that could solve everything. We'll see. I hate to make bets against Elon Musk because a lot of people have made bets against Elon Musk and lost big time because it's good and it's smart and it's really, really hardworking. But I'm not sure about this one. This one may be the first time he fails at something for real.
That we know about.
Yeah, that we know about. Yeah, he's failed at many things, but the first time that he failed at many things, but the stake was not as high. This is a 44 billion stake. It's a high stake. Let's face it. Same way SpaceX was a high stake and Tesla was a high stake. This is 44 billion is a very, very big stake. And it may, I'm not sure about this one. I'm less confident than I was about, or even in the early days, about the electric car thing and the space thing.
Well, next week when I have Elon Musk on here,
good luck with that.
Good luck with that. Hey, a man can dream.
Yeah.
I think you brought up a point. I just want to touch on this because this is an important point just for everybody to consider about this. So you're a PLG company. You said product-led growth, but there's another PLG, which is partner-led growth. And good companies take care of their partners. They create a channel, a partner channel where there's very little conflict. So you're not competing for the same dollars or euros. And you do things that help your partners grow as opposed to hurt their growth. And so I think that's really interesting what you said between Meta and Twitter. And that's very insightful for me. So when a company isn't looking at its partners and is making its partners' lives harder, that's a really bad sign. Yeah. And it's a sign of kind of like lack of maturity at management level and a lack of awareness.
Yeah, I think one of the challenge for them, all of them, is that I'm not sure they have a clear understanding of the value that we bring to them. And so when you say partners, true partners are bringing value both ways. In our ecosystem, it is difficult to measure. Like, how do we measure how would we prove the value we bring to Twitter? I'm not sure. And what, how do we measure the value Twitter bring to us? I'm not sure either. If Twitter didn't have an API, which we're paying an arm and a leg for right now, we would not manage Twitter, and that would be it. And none of our competitor would manage Twitter, and that would be better for us. That would save us a lot of money. And brands would have to go natively on Twitter. Very few of them would do that. So eventually, by providing an API, they're not helping us. They're basically forcing us to take it and pay for it because now our customers expect it. If there was no API, we probably we wouldn't spend the money, and we probably would have less problems. So what is the value we get from them? I don't know. What is the value they get from us? I don't know. I'm not sure. It's not an easy partnership to define, and it's not an easy partnership to evaluate. Back to your point. So, for example, we are building partnerships to distribute our product. That's easy. That's obvious. The value that we obviously provide them with a product that they don't have, and they provide us with a distribution channel that we don't have in their country. So the value there for the partnership is obvious. When you come to a social network and the software that are using their API, the partnership value is, I'm not saying it's not there, but I'm saying it's less easy to define value.
Yeah, okay. I hadn't thought of that, but that's a really good point. I don't think most people would have thought of that, in fairness to myself.
Yeah, so if we take Meta, they have very specific goals. So, for example, lately their goals were they want to increase the number of conversations using Messenger. So, what they expect from their partner in this scenario is like, okay, what can you do with your product or in your product? So, there are more conversations in Messenger from people who are using your product because you're doing smart things with it. So they have very specific expectations of what a good partner could do for them. And the reason I'm sharing this specific example is that because it's not obvious if you don't define those very specific things that are expected on both sides, it is not obvious the value that's being brought by to each other.
Mark Zuckerberg's on in 2 weeks on the show. So after Elon Musk, we're gonna have Mark Zuckerberg
Absolutely.
on. So it's a good guy to have on. Have you looked? I know you're a CEO, so I want to be respectful of your time. But if I can ping you with one more question, have you looked at Threads?
I have not.
Personally?
No, yeah, I have not.
An organization? Are you guys? You must be keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, of course. Obviously, my team has already wrote about it. And we've had a lot of questions from customers. Hey, when are you going to add Threads to Agorapulse? That always blows my mind. I'm like, this thing's barely there.
It's worth it. When it's worth it.
Yeah, when it's worth it. When there's an API we can work with, and when there's traction, and there's the community there, and there's engagement, and there's like now it's become obvious that this is now a channel, which is obviously not the case today. Like it's not even in Europe; it's only in the US. Because of, I guess, GDPR concerns. I don't know. So yeah.
Also, it blew up like the first 2 weeks and then imploded after that. So
I don't know.
It's not clear how sustainable this is.
I have seen so many of those initiatives. Like, what was the one on the audio social network 2 years ago? Oh crap! Forgot the name. Club.
So you're a wee bit skeptical.
Yeah, Clubhouse. Like Clubhouse was the big thing 2-3 years ago. Meerkat for live video, blah blah blah. I've seen dozens of them, and I. That's the problem with getting old. I'm 51 almost, and having been an entrepreneur for a long, long time, and having been in that industry for a long, long time, you're carefully excited by new things. I.e., you're not too excited until they become a real thing.
Well, listen. So a little plug for Agorapulse. I use it.
Really?
I can't say that about everything. Yeah, I use it to manage a brand. My mother's a writer and publisher, so I use it for a thing, and so it is something. I find it pretty intuitive to use.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to have to spend hours on YouTube watching other people how to use something. Nice if you can go on something. Thanks. But it's good. I need to learn more about how I can measure ROI, so I can see the impact of this, and I'm gonna go look at my strategy instead of talking about her book and the next book coming out. Maybe I'm going to talk more about it around. So thank you for the ideas.
You're welcome. It's a lot of work, so
it is a lot of work,
and we don't do the work for you. That's unfortunate, but
but it's a lot of work, and it takes time. It takes a personal commitment to be creative and to go through that process.
Big time, absolutely.
And like you said, be regular.
Yeah.
do this thing persist.
Totally.
Listen, thank you so much for your time. Are you gonna get a little time for a little vacation this summer?
I am
Like all the
absolutely
good French
going
people?
to Corsica next Saturday, and I'm going to sail to the north of Sardinia with my little rental sailboat, and I'm looking forward to that.
Or yourself.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Cheers.
Bye bye. Oh, always really interesting to talk with people um, and learn there. Thank you so much for joining us this week, everybody. I would like to thank our guest, Emeric Arnaud. Go on there. I think they have kind of like you can try it for free model, like so many companies, and then you can get on there and use it. Makes sense for you. Next week I'll be off. I'm going to be going on vacation as well. I'm not going to Corsica. It's a long dream of mine to go to Corsica, but we'll have to figure that out in future time. And but everybody, you have a great week, and we'll see you here in a couple of weeks.